I'm Max. And so, yeah, basically, I've been working in Singapore for 5 years. Shout out to Daryl, on AI products. And so some time ago, I was thinking, hey, why don't I just start my own startup? Right now is the perfect time. There seems to be so much hype around AI products, and compared to 5 years ago, now you can actually pitch it to companies and people are interested to hear about it. And so basically what I want to do now, I don't want to do the fancy part, which is easier to sell, which is the demo part. I want to tell you what happened after I demoed and decided to turn something into a product. Because I think this is a topic that not everyone touches on all the time. If it works in Langchain with 1 or 2 documents, it's great. If you put it into production, it doesn't always work exactly the magic that you expected it to, right? So the first thing that I noticed, right, I just basically followed the tutorials. I've been using GPT-3 for 1.5 years before that. So I kind of knew what I was getting into when I pitched my ideas, and I was like, see here, this can write emails for you. You can upload your PDF, right? Everything that we've seen from the first talk. But then once I uploaded like 100 PDFs, semantic search actually didn't perform how I expected it to, right? And so the people using it were very confused. They're like, hey, right, in the demo, it looked so good. Why is it not working with my data? Is there something wrong? Are we not the right customer? What can you do, right? And the second part is sometimes there were so many edge cases. So it doesn't matter how intricate my GPT-4 prompt became in the end. It was never up to the task, right? There was always so many edge cases, and it didn't work here, it didn't work there. So suddenly it was clear, okay, maybe one prompt is not enough, maybe one search is not enough, right? And especially with Langchain, my next issue was it was very slow. To this day, I love Langchain, or I use it all the time, but mostly for demo purposes. If I put into production, where you really care about how fast can this product work, how accurate can it work, I usually start just writing stuff from scratch, right? So the first issue that we encountered as a startup was, okay, now we have all the data. How do we store this? Do we just use the typical vector database that everyone seems to be raving about these days? And they certainly have their use cases, great technology. But for us, we need a more sophisticated approach with a lot more control, right? So the first thing that we tried is, maybe we can like fine tune GPT. Of course, that's not exactly how it works, right? Because you have so many new documents coming in all the time, and even fine tuning doesn't retain all the information. So we need to store the data, right? There's so many databases to choose from. And what we figured out very, very quickly is companies don't care about documents in a sense, right? They don't want to find like a sentence or a snippet in a document all the time, except for a few select use cases. Companies usually care about, we have assets, we have companies that we talk to, we have competitors, we have people, right? And they want to know that your product can handle these to the best of your abilities. So you need to find a way to store them in a separate way, search them in a separate way, right? And handle them differently. So, and how do we get the data, right? Now that we know, okay, we have like probably more than one database, or we have, I'm going to show you later, but we're using Postgres, where you can like do combine like a traditional normal database with like vector search. But how do we feed the data in? Many companies were like, okay, we have like 1,000 PDF files and Word documents and Excel sheets and images, right? Shout out to the first talk, Lazada, right? They have so many images with descriptions and titles. What do people really care about if they search? Should the title match, right? Should the text match, or should the image match, or is it a mix of all three? So first of all, you need to figure out which is the best embedding model that you can use for all your different modalities. How can you use like traditional search engines like normal BM25, shown on the next slides? How do you extract the metadata from your data that you have from your documents, right? So for us, it's mostly like people, if you're using CRMs, company names, and so on and so forth. So long story short, we discovered we've been just using Postgres for now, which has an amazing open source community behind it, behind different plugins as well. PG Vector is great if you want to do vector search. For embeddings, we have like keyword search that works well. And if you look for embeddings, there's like a couple of modern papers, like the E5 one from Microsoft is really, really good. So if you're still using GPT for your embeddings, for the ADA embeddings, for our use cases, E5 outperforms that by a huge, huge margin. If you have enough data, if you have like thousands of documents and above, fine-tuning the embedding model actually yields huge returns. Fine-tuning tends to like fall short when the people know exactly what they're looking for and they're using like Google-style queries and they're like, hey, I just want to really have this one piece of information. Then semantic search is not ideal. So that's why we also combine it with traditional just keyword search. BM25 performs really, really well, easy to improve with recency and sources. So mostly people care about new information more, right? If you have a huge Confluence page, again, hundreds of pages, putting like a higher value on more modern or more recently edited documents is great. There's also re-ranking models, which are way expensive, but basically if you look at the past 100 search results and you need another AI model to re-rank, how likely is this snippet to answer the question that the user has, improves that as well. This one covers all the search for us, right? But the next question, now that we have all the documents and we have all the, like, let's say assets that a company has and people, and you query for these things, we also use knowledge graphs. So basically we store every person, every entity, every asset in our database with some vector, and we look, once we ingest a document, we store them. And when people ask for something, we give them the ability to scope their search. If they say, hey, I want to know about competitor X, then we can limit our documents to where the competitor X actually is mentioned in. All right. Now the next or the last step is, okay, now you have amazing search, right? And you can, based on the search results and based on some other stuff, you can run different prompts. How do you put it into production? How do you make sure you catch all the error cases? How do you make sure it gets better over time? First things first, we use a lot of classification. So if people ask different things, sometimes they just want to chat, sometimes they want you to write an email, and other stuff, you want to be able to categorize that. If you ask GPT-4, hey, what is this? Is this A or B, right? This text, usually the accuracy is not that high and is very slow. So we usually build our own models. There's a couple of open source projects using GPT-4 to generate artificial training data. Autolabel is a great product, can recommend great open source tool. Next things you want to call to APIs, right? If you have a CRM, you want to get the latest version of that person, of that asset. API calls, you should use function calling models like the GPT one currently that was like announced a couple of weeks back. If you just ask GPT to return JSON, it just sometimes hallucinates fields, whereas the dedicated models are restricted to only output tokens that are valid for that specific JSON call. So this is really, really easy to integrate new APIs that way. And last thing that for me was the game changer, monitoring. You always want to record everything that's going on, and you want to use typical data science methods. You want to like capture how well is it received by the user? Can we get any metrics to see, are people using the product? How are they using the product? Sometimes just a thumbs up, thumbs down button is good enough to capture trends. Weights and biases has a great integration for Langchain, where you can capture like every single step. What is the agent doing? Is it here? You can see like you get all the settings from GPT-4. So if someone changes the GPT-4 settings, you want to record that and you want to see if it increases or decreases some metric over time. Right. I think that's it. Thank you very much.